Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine a quiet Tuesday afternoon, March 12th, 2024. We're just outside the city limits of West Point, Kentucky. Probably the kind of day where, nothing much happens on the road, maybe a speed trap, a minor traffic thing. And that's exactly where our story kicks off. A seemingly routine traffic stop. Kentucky State Police Trooper James Cameron Wright initiates it. The vehicle, driven by a man named John Millet. And the trooper pulls him over for what sound like, pretty standard reasons. An abrupt lane change, no signal, excessively dark window tint, and, this is key, expired registration. Way back from October 31st, 2023. Sounds like totally boilerplate police work, right?
Absolutely. You'd expect maybe a ticket, maybe a warning, everyone moves on.
Exactly. But what happened in the moments right after that initial contact? It just defies all expectations. This wasn't just another traffic stop. It escalated dramatically, violently, and in a way that, frankly, nearly a year later, still sends a shiver down your spine. You, our listener, you really need to hear the full, unvarnished story, especially if you only caught the headlines because they just didn't capture the true depth.
Right, because this incident, it isn't just about one driver and one trooper.
No, it's like a window into something much bigger, much more disturbing, something systemic. So our mission today is to really dig deep. We want to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge, the key insights from the body cam footage, the transcripts, the legal analyses we've got. We're not just trying to figure out what happened to John Millet that day. We need to understand the profound, really unsettling implications for accountability, for justice within an entire state police force.
And what's truly fascinating here, and also deeply concerning, is how quickly this seemingly isolated encounter, just a driver and a cop, it just unravels. It reveals this much, much larger narrative. It introduces us, definitively, to Trooper James Cameron Wright, who now, as the legal wheels have turned, faces really significant, very severe legal action.
Yeah, tell us about that, the federal indictment.
Right. March 4th, 2025. A federal criminal indictment was returned against him in Louisville, Kentucky. And just to be clear, these aren't minor things. We're talking 2 counts of using excessive force. That goes right to the heart of police conduct, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Core stuff.
And 1 count of perjury. Lying under oath. A very grave offense. But here's the real kicker, the sort of central idea of our deep dive today. This isn't, and it seems it never was, an isolated incident.
Not just one bad apple.
Exactly. This isn't just one bad apple in an otherwise pristine barrel, as they say. The pattern of behavior we're about to unpack. And crucially, the institutional response to it. Well, it should send a genuine shiver down your spine because it implicates people, processes, everybody, really, all the way to the very top of the Kentucky State Police leadership.
Wow.
So this isn't just a simple case of misconduct. It's a profound window into a deeply troubling and, it seems, pervasive systemic issue.
Absolutely. And to really get a handle on the gravity here, we have to go back to that moment, March 12th, 2024. We need to walk through that initial interaction. Trooper Wright, John Millet. The body cam footage captures it with, chilling clarity. When Wright first goes up to Millet's car, you immediately get this sense of vulnerability from Millet. He's candid, almost disarmingly so. He admits right off the bat, he's lost, bub. That Kentucky term.
Yeah.
Just means he's lost, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
He explains he's looking for someone selling something on Facebook, trying to get to a place called Maldra, but his words going the wrong way. It's like an immediate opening up, admitting he's disoriented.
And that vulnerability, it continues, doesn't it? He volunteers information.
Oh, absolutely. It gets more vulnerable.
Yeah.
He then just volunteers crucial, self-incriminating stuff, admits he doesn't have car insurance right then, explains he just got his taxes back, he was looking for new insurance rates. You can almost feel his desperation in the audio. He literally begs Trooper Wright for a break.
Yeah, I remember that part of the transcript. It's stark.
He says, and this is a direct quote, "I really just need a break this time, man. I'm serious.
Yeah.
Like, I know that I'm doing what I need to give you a break on. I'm doing everything wrong. I don't have tags. I don't have insurance."
Wow, just laying it all out there.
It's raw, a raw, unvarnished plea for understanding, a moment of real human vulnerability laid bare. And what's initially striking is Wright's response. At first, it seems, almost understanding, empathetic even.
Right, he says something like, I can deal with that.
Yeah. He says, I can deal with that. Be honest, I care about that stuff, but I couldn't care less about that compared to other things. You know what I'm saying?
Which suggests, maybe he's focused on something else, bigger fish to fry, maybe.
Exactly. It implies minor stuff like tags, insurance. That's secondary. He then asks Millet, straight up, anything illegal in the car.
And Millet says,
Immediate, unequivocal no. Then Millet complies, turns off the engine. Wright asks him to step out of the car to talk.
Yeah.
At this exact point, it still feels like it's following the script, a routine, relatively calm traffic stop.
Which is what makes the next part so jarring.
Precisely. The tension builds because of that initial normalcy.
And this is where the narrative just completely pivots. And it brings up this absolutely critical question about, power dynamics and perception in policing. Like, what exactly is compliance in the eyes of an officer? And how fast can calm turn into, well, violent confrontation?
We need to look at that exact moment. Wright's demeanor shifts.
Right, because the body cam footage, it's just damningly clear. Wright perceives Millet reaching for something inside the car. But if you actually watch the video, what you see is Millet gently tossing an object onto the passenger seat. It's later identified clearly as a lighter and his phone.
Okay, so not reaching for a weapon or anything.
No. And after tossing it, he immediately raises his hands. His phone is clearly visible in his left arm. Every single observable action by Millet at this critical point shows compliance. He's not struggling, he's not resisting, he's not making furtive movements. He is actually demonstrating cooperation, showing his hands, getting out like he was told.
So he's doing what he was asked. Hands up. Visible phone.
Exactly. Yet despite this apparent documented cooperation, we see this truly violent, almost inexplicable shift in Wright's actions. Without warning, without any further command, Wright grabs Millet's right arm. At the same time, he's yelling, "Don't reach for anything!"
Even though the reaching seemed to be just putting the phone and lighter down.
Precisely. And the crucial detail, confirmed by legal analysis, is that even though Millet did not resist Wright in any way, he didn't pull away, didn't struggle, didn't fight, Wright immediately, with no discernible provocation, proceeds to bear hug Mr. Millet and violently throw him to the ground.
Just like that. Bear hug, throw down.
Just like that. The escalation from a verbal command to physical assault is just jarring. And then it accelerates even further. Less than a second later, after yelling repeatedly, "Get on your belly! Get on your belly!" Wright deploys his taser.
Deploys the taser.
And the dash cam footage, which captures the audio, it reveals not just one brief zap, it's two separate deployments. You can clearly hear this popping noise for extended periods of time. It continues for approximately 10 seconds.
10 seconds. That's a long time for a taser deployment.
It's a significant duration for that kind of electrical shock. And Millet's immediate reactions, caught on the body cam, they're just this heart-wrenching mix of confusion, distress, disbelief.
What's he saying?
Things like, "I'm not even doing nothing wrong. Why? Why are you touching me, dude? What's wrong with you?" And really crucially, your camera will show.
Appealing to the camera right away.
His immediate instinct. He thinks the objective evidence will exonerate him. But Wright, in response to this pain and confusion, he accuses him of obstructing and now resisting arrest. And then, almost like an afterthought, claims he can smell weed and alcohol.
Suddenly, there's weed and alcohol involved.
Suddenly. The speed and violence of this shift, given what Millet was actually doing on the video, it's incredibly concerning, and it really lays the groundwork for the more serious charges against Wright himself.
And the aftermath of that initial brutal tasing,
Yeah.
it's just as harrowing, maybe even more so.
Yeah.
Because it shows this continued pattern of just gratuitous force. After the tasing, Millet is eventually handcuffed, pulled to his feet. But the ordeal, incredibly, isn't over.
No, there's more.
Oh, yeah. Immediately after he's upright, Trooper Wright, again with no apparent provocation, gratuitously throws Mr. Millet back to the ground, injuring him.
After he's cuffed.
After he's cuffed. This second slam, after he's already subdued, cuffed, it's particularly egregious. And it's at this point that Millet's distress becomes even more pronounced. It's physically agonizing. Clear, audible, desperate complaints of severe shoulder pain.
Like what?
Screaming, "My shoulder's broke, dude, and you just slammed me and I didn't even touch you."
Yeah.
He keeps saying, "I didn't do nothing wrong." And then this question that just cuts right to the core. Dude, why are you doing this to me? You just want to be mean to somebody today.
Wow. That's powerful.
This intense pain, this confusion, coupled with the total lack of justification for the force. It led to Millet being transported to Baptist Health Hardin Hospital for initial treatment.
Okay, so he gets medical attention.
He does. But while he's there, the situation keeps unfolding legally.
Oh.
Trooper Wright eventually shows up with a signed search warrant, authorized by District Court Judge Kimberly Schuman, specifically for a blood test.
For the DUI suspicion.
Right. But Millet, probably shaken, definitely in pain, maybe he'd contacted a lawyer by then, he refuses the blood test. says his lawyer advised him to.
Which is his right, technically, though it has consequences.
Exactly. The trooper tells him this refusal means another charge. Obstruction of governmental operations. Yeah. Says it's a Class A misdemeanor. Implies he probably won't get bond. Ratcheting up the pressure.
Standard tactic, unfortunately, in these situations.
Yeah. So ultimately, John Millet is facing this whole laundry list of charges from that stop. DUI, resisting arrest, obstructing governmental operations, disorderly conduct for yelling and screaming, presumably his cries of pain.
Which is ironic.
Right. Plus, no registration, no insurance, open alcoholic beverage in the vehicle, and careless driving for that initial lane change. It's a huge pile of accusations from a minor stop.
So what happened with those charges? Did they stick?
Well, this is telling. The eventual outcome for Millet's charges, it tells a different story. The most serious ones, the resisting charge, the obstruction, everything else related to his alleged misconduct, gets knocked down, reduced, or dismissed.
Ah, interesting.
He eventually pled to just a minor open container charge and a reduced DUI charge, which in itself suggests the initial accusations of him obstructing and resisting didn't really hold water, especially given the extreme force used against him.
Yeah, that plea deal certainly casts doubt on the initial narrative from the trooper. And if we connect this specific incident, John Millet's ordeal, to the bigger picture, it becomes painfully clear. This sequence, routine traffic stop, rapid escalation into violence, it's not an anomaly for Trooper Wright. As the civil rights lawyer handling the case put it quite bluntly, basically he just escalates a routine traffic stop into violence, just like he's done in all these other incidents.
So it's a pattern.
A chilling consistency. It points to a deeply ingrained pattern, a modus operandi, rather than just a single bad judgment call. It seems fundamental to his policing style. Turn minor interactions into violent confrontations. Repeatedly.
And Millet's injuries? Were they actually confirmed, that broken shoulder claim?
Well, this is another critical point. Mr. Millet's injuries were far, far more extensive and severe than what was initially confirmed at that first hospital, Baptist Health Hardin. Their discharge papers said his shoulder was not dislocated today, maybe a hairline rib fracture, kind of downplaying it.
Yeah.
But further, more thorough medical evaluation painted a starkly different, much grimmer picture. Subsequent diagnosis revealed a fracture of 7 of his ribs.
7 ribs.
7. And a full dislocation on his left shoulder. These are not minor injuries. A dislocated shoulder alone is incredibly painful, debilitating. But 7 fractured ribs, that's significant, potentially life-threatening, can affect breathing, internal organs.
Yeah.
This level of trauma led to a 7 days of hospital admission records at St. Mary's Hospital, a week-long inpatient stay. That stands in stark contrast to the initial, seemingly less severe diagnosis from Baptist Health.
Wow, a whole week in the hospital.
It powerfully underscores the brutal, excessive force used against Mr. Millet, force that went way beyond necessary or even what was medically acknowledged at first glance. And for anyone listening who isn't familiar with tasers, it's important to remember those probes go into your skin. It's like a barb that goes into your skin.
Right, they physically embed.
It's not just an electrical shock. It involves physical penetration, barb-like wounds, adds another layer of physical trauma to the intense pain of the electricity. This was absolutely not a minor incident for Mr. Millet. It was deeply traumatic, physically damaging.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, and frankly, just deeply unsettling. The incident with John Millet, it isn't some isolated event for Trooper James Cameron Wright. It's actually part of a much larger disturbing mosaic of alleged excessive force incidents, stretching back years, some as far as 5 years before the Millet encounter.
5 years, wow.
Yeah. When we zoom out, look at this timeline, a consistent aggressive pattern just jumps out. Let's look at the case of Justin Halcomb first. This happened March 6, 2020. Started with a chase, but once Halcomb was stopped, the situation seemed to de-escalate. Halcomb stopped his truck, turned off his camera, got out, put his hands on the truck, indicating cooperation, right?
Sounds like compliance. Hands on the truck.
Exactly. Yet, despite these clear signs of surrender, he was then piled on by multiple KSP troopers, including Wright. The accounts say Wright proceeded to shove his head to the ground repeatedly and gratuitously, strikes him as he's piled on by multiple officers.
Piled on and beaten while complying.
That's what the reports suggest. And the hospital photos afterwards, they're jarring. Schaufka, jacked up and bloody. Visible injuries indicating significant force was used.
Okay, that's one. What else?
Just a month later, April 2, 2020, we get the incident involving Thomas Davis. In this case, Davis was stopped. Trooper Wright immediately opened the driver's door and just throws him to the ground even though he wasn't actively resisting.
Throws him down without resistance. Again.
Followed by what are described as repeated and gratuitous strikes. Again, that pattern. Immediate, unprovoked physical escalation, even when there's no active resistance. It's glaringly evident.
And these incidents, they were documented internally, right?
Crucially, yes, a common thread through both Halcomb and Thomas Gavis. They generated response to resistance, or CARSA reports, within KSP protocols. For those unfamiliar, these are internal police documents, required whenever an officer uses physical force beyond just basic control holds.
So KSP knew force was used.
The existence of these reports confirms KSP itself acknowledged these as incidents where force was deployed, which sets the stage for what should have been a thorough internal review.
Should have been. Which brings us to a really profoundly disturbing revelation about KSP's internal policies regarding these very RR reports. And it raises a huge question about the organization's integrity.
Okay, what's the policy?
As the legal analysis has meticulously documented, KSP policy, and this is almost unbelievable in its implication, is to criminally charge every single person that they beat or abuse with obstruction of justice or resisting arrest, specifically resisting arrest.
So we charge everyone they use force on.
Everyone. But here's the most alarming part, the part that just fundamentally undermines justice. This policy is stated to occur regardless of whether or not they in fact resisted.
Regardless. So even if they didn't resist, they get charged with resisting.
Think about that. It's not just a loophole. It's an institutionalized mechanism, explicitly designed, it seems, to create a legal justification for the officer's actions, even when those actions are excessive or unprovoked.
That's incredible.
This policy is explicitly framed by legal experts as a cover-up embedded in KSP policy. The civil rights lawyer involved bluntly called it insane, and you can see why. It weaponizes the legal system against the very people who've been subjected to alleged abuse, forces them to fight additional criminal charges just for being on the receiving end of excessive force.
So the system protects the officer by default.
It certainly appears that way. And the complicity, alarmingly, it runs all the way to the top. Philip Bernett. He held a significant position. Lieutenant colonel in charge of operations at the time, he played a direct role.
How so?
He was responsible for reviewing the internal affairs recommendations on these response to resistance reports, the RR reports we just mentioned.
Okay, so he reviewed the Halcomb and Davis reports.
Yes, and the evidence shows that he signed off on and approves that there was no unlawful use of force on both Davis and Halcomb.
He approved the force used in those incidents.
He signed off saying it was lawful. Now, this is a critical, damning detail, because later a federal grand jury, an independent body, higher legal authority, reviewed the evidence and found probable cause to arrest and charge these very troopers with criminal use of force in both those incidents.
So the feds directly contradicted KSP's internal finding, signed off by Bernett.
Directly, unambiguously contradicted it. It suggests a fundamental misalignment. Not just in individual judgment, but in the institutional standards, the willingness to acknowledge, let alone address, excessive force within KSP leadership. It indicates that the internal review process, far from being a mechanism for accountability, was functioning as a mechanism for institutional exoneration, even when there was clear evidence of misconduct.
And if you thought that was disturbing, the Hornback incident, this one, maybe more than any other, just pulls back the curtain on the depth of this systemic issue. And it ties directly into that perjury charge against Wright.
Right. This happened just days after the Davis incident.
Just 7 days later, April 9th, 2020, Alex Hornback. What makes this case so pivotal, so incredibly damning, is the video footage.
Ah, video again.
Yes, but this time it was from inside the Hornback home. It captured the entire interaction. And crucially, the troopers involved had no idea they were being recorded.
Oh, they didn't know?
Nope. And the video explicitly showed them striking Hornback. This damning objective evidence was later obtained by a persistent civil rights lawyer, Chris Wist.
So there's video of them hitting him.
Undeniable video. But the real bombshell came later. During the depositions for the civil rights lawsuit that followed, both Trooper Wright and another trooper, Trooper Zarski, were put under oath, sworn to tell the absolute truth, knowing the consequences of lying.
Okay. And what did they say?
Despite the existence of that video evidence, both troopers unequivocally said they used no force.
They denied using force, even with the video.
Flat out denied it. We have the actual chilling quote from Wright's deposition. The lawyer asked him, once you had him on the ground, did you strike or hit him with a closed fist at all?
And Wright says,
no, sir. Concise, unwavering. The lawyer presses, okay, or any part of your body. Again, Wright replies, "No, sir." Wow, a clear, direct denial. Absolutely. Captured on legal record, directly contradicted by objective video. This wasn't just fuzzy memory. This was an outright fabrication under oath. Perjury.
And what's truly fascinating here, and just utterly scandalous, is the almost unbelievable aftermath of this Hornback case within the Kentucky State Police system. The federal judge in that civil rights lawsuit, faced with the video and the officer's testimony, explicitly calls out these two cops for lying, points it right out.
So the judge acknowledged the perjury.
Absolutely. You'd expect immediate severe consequences, right? Especially for sworn officers lying under oath. But here's the incredible, almost farcical discrepancy in how the state system responded.
Yeah.
Trooper Zarsky, who committed the exact same perjury, he was held accountable by the state.
Okay, so Zarsky faced consequences.
Yes, he was forced to resign and indicted on state perjury charges and ultimately convicted. His career was over. Done. Never work as a police officer again.
Justifiable, right?
Yeah.
Right. Seems appropriate.
However, Trooper Wright, who did the exact same thing as Zarsky, lied under oath about beating a citizen with video proof. He faced no such repercussions from the state system at that time.
Nothing. No state charges. Not fired.
He was not fired. He was not forced to resign. He was not charged by the state for his perjury. And in a twist that just defies belief, instead of facing consequences for perjury and beating a citizen, Trooper Wright was given an award for Trooper of the Year.
Trooper of the Year? Are you serious?
Dead serious. An officer accused of beating someone, then lying about it under oath, was rewarded by his own department as the best of the best. You literally could not make this up if you wanted to.
That's beyond belief.
It's an absurdity that speaks volumes about the internal culture, the priorities within KSP at the time. Protecting an officer, even one who committed perjury, seemed to trump accountability. Now, to be absolutely clear, Wright was eventually, much later, indicted for perjury by the feds recently for his same testimony in the Hornback case.
Ah, so the federal system did step in on the perjury charge eventually.
Yes. It highlights the federal response to the state's apparent inaction, or worse, rewarding misconduct. Justice delayed, perhaps, but it found a different route.
And the pattern, disturbingly, it didn't even stop after the Millet incident, the one we started with.
It continued, even after Millet.
Yeah. Look at the case of Dawson Blevins. This happened in June 2024, just a few months after the Millet encounter. Another typical traffic stop that once again quickly spiraled, turned tense when Trooper Wright, consistent with his pattern, turned his taser on Dawson Blevins.
Taser again. What was the reason this time?
Blevins was tackled and tased multiple times for apparently not complying quickly enough with orders to get out of the car.
Not complying quickly enough, not necessarily resisting, just not fast enough.
Exactly. It's yet another example mirroring the others we discussed. Halcomb, Davis, Millet. All showing this disturbingly consistent use of immediate excessive force when faced with perceived non-compliance rather than active resistance.
Yeah, this just solidifies that clear, documented pattern in Wright's behavior. Time and again, multiple incidents, years apart, we see him taking just a routine traffic stop, and when somebody doesn't respond quickly enough, throwing them on the ground violently and tasing them.
It's like his go-to move.
It's not an aberration. Legal experts call it his consistent pattern in MMO, his modus operandi. It's a signature move, a repeated strategy. And the alleged number of these incidents is just staggering. Wright is said to have generated over 100 use of force incidents.
Over 100.
Over 100. Now, that exact number is still under investigation, but if true, a figure like that paints a chilling picture. Extreme, repeated, pervasive aggression.
It's definitely not an isolated event.
Yeah.
Or even a few isolated events.
No, it's a deeply ingrained, continually executed pattern of conduct. It suggests a serious problem with an individual officer, yes, but also, by extension, with the system that let it persist for so long.
So what does this all mean for the bigger picture? For law enforcement? This clearly isn't just about one bad apple trooper in the Kentucky State Police. It points to something much deeper, more insidious, a systemic issue within the organization itself.
Right. And KSP, for a long time, they had this reputation, didn't they? The gold standard of policing in Kentucky, known for professionalism, training.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But this whole narrative exposes a fundamental disconnect between that reputation and the reality of their internal mechanisms, especially around accountability. Let's go back to Commissioner Philip Bernett's role. His position put him squarely in charge of ensuring appropriate use of force.
He was high up. Lieutenant Colonel, head of operations.
His signature is literally on those response to resistance reports. He personally approved uses of force. like in the Halcombe and Davis incidents.
The same incidents the feds later called criminal use of force.
Exactly. The very same ones later contradicted by an independent federal grand jury indictment. That is a profound disconnect at the very top of the command chain. It suggests the problem wasn't just rogue officers. It was the institutional review process itself. The system designed to catch and correct this behavior, it was failing. Or worse, maybe actively legitimizing it.
And then there's the supervisor level.
Right. Sergeant Jeremy Mabe, identified as the immediate supervisor who was assigned to investigate most of these uses of force at Post 4, where Wright was stationed.
So he's the first line of internal investigation for these incidents.
A crucial link in the chain of accountability. Or, as it seems here, the lack thereof.
And what's really unsettling here is Sergeant Mabe's own troubling history. It just fundamentally undermines his supposed role as an impartial internal investigator.
He had his own issues.
Oh, yeah. Mabe himself was sued in 2017 for a use of force incident and threatening to illegally arrest road workers.
Sued for use of force himself.
Yes. And then sued again for excessive force and false arrest in 2020. So this raises that absolutely critical question, right? Who's policing the people that are supposed to police the police, like when they're getting sued themselves?
Huge conflict of interest.
An inherent, undeniable conflict. How can citizens or even other officers trust investigations conducted by someone with that kind of track record?
And what was his role in investigating Wright's incidents?
Well, Mabe's role in the internal whitewash, as the legal analysis calls it, is explicitly detailed. He's described as consistently writing in repeated use of force investigations. The subject took a bladed, aggressive stance, and that justifies all these people getting jacked up.
Bladed aggressive stance sounds like police jargon.
It is. It's a term often taught in training, describing a non-compliant or potentially threatening posture. But Mabe seems to have used it as just a boilerplate justification, a convenient phrase to legitimize almost any level of force, regardless of the actual circumstances.
So he just copy-pasted that justification.
Yeah, it appears that way. He was directly involved in whitewashing the Halcombe and Davis incidents, among others, essentially providing pre-written justifications for what a federal grand jury later deemed criminal use of force.
That's not just poor judgment. That's actively enabling it.
It's a pattern of systemic internal validation of potentially unlawful behavior. But it gets even worse. It moves beyond just poor oversight to a shocking level of deliberate suppression of accountability efforts.
How so? What did they suppress?
The Kentucky State Police went out and spent money on a new tracking system called IA Pro.
IA Pro, what's that?
For listeners who don't know, IA Pro is a widely used, sophisticated software. It's designed to track internal affairs complaints, use of force incidents, officer performance data. It's exactly the kind of tool that lets agencies spot patterns, intervene early with problem officers, ensure transparency.
Okay, sounds like a good thing. A step towards accountability.
You'd think so. KSP reportedly spent more than $100,000 for IA Pro software. It would allow tracking of like these E42 incidents. That's their internal term for use of force incidents.
So they bought the system.
They bought the system. But then came the shocking active decision by KSP leadership. After acquiring this tool for transparency, they then decided not to do that because they don't want tracking within KSP of these use of force incidents to be able to demonstrate pattern in practice.
Wait. They bought the tracking software and then decided not to use it for tracking use of force.
Exactly. They specifically chose not to use it to track patterns of force because they didn't want to be able to demonstrate those patterns.
That's actively avoiding accountability.
It's not an accident, not a bureaucratic delay, not budget cuts. This is described as a deliberate decision to cover up serious misconduct all the way to the top of the organization. It's an intentional act to prevent transparency, to hinder identifying problematic patterns, and by extension, to shield officers from accountability. This decision to buy the tool and then suppress its use, it's profoundly damning.
It suggests a culture prioritizing self-preservation over public safety and justice.
Absolutely. And adding another layer to this internal culture, there's the story from a KSP insider, a whistleblower, prepared to testify.
What does the whistleblower say?
That when KSP first got body cameras, one of the first people it was issued to was Cameron Wright.
They gave Wright one of the first body cams. Why?
Because, according to this whistleblower, they knew he was out there tuning up citizens, illegally, and they wanted to kind of tone him down a little bit by getting him a body camera.
So they knew about his behavior before these incidents, and the solution was just give him a camera.
Think about those implications. Leadership was allegedly aware of Wright's aggression, and their solution wasn't discipline, wasn't removal. It was hope a camera would deter him.
And clearly it didn't.
The grim conclusion, confirmed by the ongoing pattern, is it didn't stop him, obviously.
Wow.
And there's even more corroboration of this internal culture. A specific conversation captured on Bodycam at the hospital during the John Millet incident itself.
The conversation between who?
Between lieutenants, possibly including a Lieutenant McKee. They're heard discussing how to cover it up and how Wright needs to respond to this to not, to not violate policy.
Discussing how to frame it to avoid violations, not how to investigate it.
Exactly. It's presented as part and parcel with what's going on at Post 4 KSP, indicating this localized culture of minimizing, justifying potentially unlawful actions. The implication for the whole organization is stark. The rot is all the way to the top. Despite KSP having that gold standard reputation in Kentucky for so long, the evidence points to a clear, desperate need for systemic changes in how they train, how they handle resistance response, and, most importantly, how they hold their own accountable. The system seemed designed, or at least allowed, to protect its own, even at the cost of justice and public trust.
So this perfect storm, really, of individual misconduct and systemic failure, it ultimately led to a powerful intervention. The federal government finally stepping in, addressing issues the state system seemed unwilling or maybe unable to fix itself.
The feds had to get involved.
Right. On March 4th, 2025, that federal grand jury in Louisville, Kentucky, returned a criminal indictment against Trooper James Cameron Wright. And this wasn't just a state charge, potentially influenced by local politics or departmental pressure. This was the full weight of the federal justice system coming down.
A very different ballgame.
Absolutely. Let's just quickly reiterate those specific charges, because they cover several of the worst incidents we've discussed, showing the historical reach. First, excessive use of force for the Justin Halcomb incident back on March 5th, 2020. Second, excessive use of force for the John Millet incident, the one we started with, March 12th, 2024. And third, that serious charge of perjury for the Alex Hornback case, April 9th, 2020. Where he allegedly lied under oath about striking Hornback.
So charges spanning 4 years of conduct.
Exactly. These federal charges, they represent a huge turning point, a clear sign that these systemic issues in the KSP were severe enough, resistant enough to internal correction, that they warranted direct intervention from the highest levels of law enforcement in the country.
And what's truly fascinating and really significant about this federal involvement is just the sheer weight and scope of the resources they're bringing. It's not just the local U.S. Attorney's Office handling this. This case involves attorneys from Main Justice, the Criminal Division, the Civil Rights Division, Criminal Section.
Attorneys from D.C.
Yes. We're talking 4 or 5 attorneys specifically assigned to this one case, coming directly from Washington, D.C. That unequivocally demonstrates that this has gotten the attention of Washington, D.C. It's been that bad.
That signals how serious they view this.
Immensely serious. The federal government, specifically the Department of Justice, doesn't typically jump into local police misconduct cases like this unless the patterns of abuse and cover-up are just so egregious, so widespread, so resistant to state solutions that they pose a significant threat to civil rights and the rule of law. It basically signals a complete lack of faith in the state's ability, or maybe willingness, to hold its own officers accountable.
And the potential consequences for Wright, if he's convicted on these federal charges.
They're severe. He is looking at around 3 to 4 years in a federal penitentiary if he's convicted on all 3, assuming he doesn't plea.
Federal time. That's significant.
A significant federal sentence. Very different from potential state penalties. And as for Wright's current job status, it further highlights the ongoing issues within KSP even after a federal indictment.
Is he still employed?
He is employed by KSP, but currently on paid leave pending the criminal outcome.
Paid leave, even after being indicted by the feds.
Yes, which means even the indictment was not sufficient to end his employment. He is still being paid by the taxpayers to sit at home right now while his criminal charges are pending.
Taxpayers are footing the bill while he awaits trial on federal charges.
Exactly. This continued burden on taxpayers, the continued employment, it just underscores the profound lack of immediate accountability within the state system until the feds force the issue.
So looking at the bigger picture, what does this case tell us about Kentucky?
Well, this case, in its broader context, it points to serious, serious problems in Kentucky. And this isn't framed as a political issue, not partisan. It really transcends those typical divides. It's about a fundamental breakdown in police leadership in Kentucky not following the laws and rules that we already have and expect them to follow.
A failure of leadership to enforce existing rules.
Precisely. It's a stark, uncomfortable reminder of a critical principle in governance. Government employees will not be held accountable if nobody is watching them. The implications here, they stretch far beyond just Kentucky or one police department. It speaks to the universal need for robust, independent oversight, for transparency, for unyielding accountability and law enforcement everywhere, across the whole nation.
It shows that a reputation, that gold standard, it means nothing if the internal culture allows this kind of rot to fester and spread.
Exactly right. Yeah. # outro.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, as you try to process this really intricate, deeply troubling story? We've covered a lot of ground today. We started with that seemingly routine traffic stop. John Millet spiraled into a violent confrontation, left him with severe injuries. From there, we uncovered this disturbing, consistent pattern of alleged excessive force. Trooper James Cameron Wright. Incidents stretching back years, including cases where he was explicitly accused of lying under oath. Then this deep dive pulled back the curtain on a systemic scandal within the Kentucky State Police itself, implicating top leadership like Commissioner Bernett, Sergeant Mabe, revealing what looks like a deliberate culture of cover-up, internal validation of misconduct, even actively refusing to use accountability tools they bought, like that IA Pro system.
With the decision not to track.
Yeah. Ultimately, it took the full force of federal intervention to bring criminal charges against Wright, highlighting that profound disconnect between state-level internal investigations and the basic pursuit of justice. So you now have, hopefully, a deeper, more nuanced understanding of this complex issue, far beyond maybe what a typical news headline could convey. Recognizing that misconduct is not always about isolated individuals, these bad apples, but often, chillingly, it's about the organizational systems, the cultures, that can not only allow but actively ignore, enable, or even, unbelievably, reward such egregious behavior.
And this really does raise an important question for all of us, doesn't it? A fundamental reflection on how our society works. What role do accountability, transparency, and genuinely robust oversight truly play in maintaining public trust? Trust in the institutions that are meant to protect us. This story out of Kentucky, it serves as a stark, powerful reminder, even in organizations that held that gold standard reputation for a long time. Without constant vigilance, without external scrutiny, without an unwavering commitment to genuine, sometimes painful accountability, the rot can indeed go all the way to the top.
It's a sobering thought.
It is. It encourages you, the listener, to maybe consider what role you might play in demanding accountability in your own communities, or how understanding these systemic issues can deepen your perspectives on law enforcement and civil rights. It reminds us fundamentally that our rights don't end where fear begins. Freedom, real freedom, it's inherently scary sometimes. And we as a society, we have to deal with that, constantly demanding that our institutions uphold the very principles they are sworn to protect.